Good afternoon. I'm Beverly Kane, State Librarian of Ohio. As State Librarian, I work with staff and the State Library Board to build and expand library services to all types of libraries and to Ohio residents regardless of their geographic location. With over 25 years' experience working in libraries, I understand the incredible impact technology can make, but I also understand how challenging it can be to adapt to that rapidly changing technology. Our featured speaker this afternoon, Sue Polanka, brings a wealth of experience and great insights to this topic. She created the award-winning blog, No Shelf Required, a blog about the issues surrounding ebooks for librarians and publishers. The blog transformed into a book series with ALA Publishing in 2011 and 2012. Sue is the head of reference and instruction at the Wright State University Libraries in Dayton, Ohio. She's president of the Academic Library Association of Ohio and was elected to ALA Council in 2012. She was named a Library Journal Mover and Shaker in 2011, tagged as the ebook guru. Her column, Ebook Buzz, appears in Online Magazine. Please join me in welcoming Sue Polanka.
I was hoping they'd keep the music on so I could show you why I really won that Mover and Shaker award, but I think we're going to have to stick to ebooks. So thank you all so much for coming. I would like to ask before we begin, how many of you are in schools where every student is required to have some type of device? One. What type of device is it, or is it a bring your own? You know, I shouldn't have asked because unfortunately now I can't hear. I'm sorry. So a netbook, all right, that's good, that's very good. All right, so the rest of you are here to learn more about what this might mean, and I'm glad that you're here because it's very complicated. And as a librarian, you know, my role has been to purchase and make content accessible to all users in any way, shape, or form that they might need to use it. And I've been doing that for years, and now that we have these individual devices, it's become more and more challenging because we need to find ways to make this content accessible from all these different types of devices out there. So what I wanted to talk about today were formats and devices with ebooks, and talk about what kind of makes up some of these garden walls, some of these big challenges that we have to get through, discuss some of the nitty-gritty details of purchasing content, particularly from a library perspective, so that you understand what your school library media specialist might be going through to be able to get you content. And I'll end with some talk about digital textbooks and open educational resources. So as I was saying before, somehow we have to acquire content for our schools and our students to use that can be accessible by any company's device, by any type of device that's out there. And in this new world that we have of buying content, this is getting particularly challenging for us. And it's very likely that we could get ourselves trapped into one of these walled gardens where we can't get out, or we can't share, or we can't get information to other people. So some devices and formats. There are basically four main ways to read electronic books. The first is the dedicated e-readers. So those of you that may have the Kindle 3, or perhaps you have a black and white Sony reader or a Nook, something like that, where basically the primary purpose is to read books. They may have a browser, but it's not really a mature browser. It doesn't allow you to do everything you want. It's generally not full color. These are really falling by the wayside, and you're not going to see too many more of these being developed. And if you do, they're going to be very cheap just for that purpose of reading. So if any of your schools are looking at dedicated e-readers as the device, I would strongly discourage you from that. Instead, I would look at one of the others. Tablet devices are huge right now. And if you look at every major manufacturer of the dedicated e-readers, they've all gone to some type of tablet device, and that's because that's the way we're moving, that you can do more than just read on these tablets. You can play games and download all the apps and have full web browser and music and movies and et cetera. You can also use your smartphones, or perhaps like an iPod that may not be a phone, but it's a small device that has Wi-Fi access. All you need is an app. And same with the tablets. You have to have some kind of app on there to be able to read ebooks. And there's hundreds of ebook apps out there that you can download for that. And then finally, you could use this computer like I have here. You can use your tablet, I'm sorry, not your tablet, your netbook, or your desktop computer, your laptop. And all you need there is a piece of software. so that you can upload the right kind of format of ebook and be able to consume it on your screen. So I want to kind of set the stage for purchasing ebooks. Because of the way that Kindle and Amazon came out with the Kindle device, it's really brought to the forefront a couple of different ways for us to buy electronic content. On the one side, you have content that is generally individually priced, a book for $9.99 or $7.99. You generally buy it through an online bookstore. You set up a user account. It's usually set up for an individual person to access and use this content, and you download it to a device and you consume it there, and it's a special device in a special format. This is not at all friendly to libraries and schools because it's designed for individual one-person purchase and consumption, and that's the way all the license agreements are written. On the other side of things, this is how libraries have traditionally purchased content for the schools and, in my case, for the academic library for our college environment. We purchase materials as a large collection. We might buy thousands of ebooks from one publisher or one distributor. And we also have the opportunity to buy an individual book if we want, but it's usually better for us to buy a huge chunk of titles because you get a better price. We license them for access for the entire school, the entire library, not just one person, everybody. We can use them online through a browser, and then we also have options to download for individuals that want to walk off and read offline. And much of the content is browser-based as well, so that you can consume and interact with it in more robust ways. So think about that as we go along, because I'm going to be talking quite a bit about buying for the one device, one individual, one agreement, versus buying for the huge amount of people. One of the major things that you need to be concerned with when purchasing ebook content is the format that it comes in. There are tons of different ebook formats out there. You're probably well aware of EPUBs and PDFs and even HTML, and there are some ebooks that are just in doc format. But every other device maker tends to have their own proprietary format because they want to purposely lock you into their device and their format so that you keep coming to them and buying the content for them. And one of the companies that does this best is Amazon. And they have their own format. It's a proprietary format called AZW. And if you own an Amazon Kindle, or if you have an iPad with the Amazon application on there, or if you have a book, your netbook with Kindle software on there, you will buy all of your books in the AZW format and you'll read them there. You decide to get rid of your Kindle Fire and go buy a Barnes & Noble Nook, you can't take your content with you because it's set up and established for that particular device maker. What happens then when we have all of these different formats, they're laden with something called DRM, which is digital rights management. So pretend my fist is the ebook content here, and the DRM comes and surrounds it. It's a piece of software that gets wrapped around the content, and it puts all the restrictions on. How many of you have borrowed something from your public library before and downloaded it? Okay. And you check it out one person at a time, right? And is there a due date? And does the book fall off your device somehow at a certain time period? That's the DRM. The DRM is determining all that. The DRM prevents you from sharing, from printing, from downloading too much, from doing all of the kind of things that we want to do, to share things. And so the ebooks are laden with DRM. It comes too much on all of it. And it's not just ebooks, it's all types of electronic content have it. There is an ebook format that is a standard. It's a free and open standard. It was started years ago by the International Digital Publishing Forum. And it's called EPUB, and you've probably downloaded EPUB books from your public library to read on your Barnes & Noble devices or Sony devices. Unfortunately, it's not used consistently by publishers, particularly publishers who school libraries and academic libraries might turn to for content, because that's the scholarly, educational type content we want, not the pop fiction tends to be what you see in the EPUB formats. So DRM can still be added to these. That's how you know that your book is going to disappear from your public library account. Sony and iPad have adopted EPUB. Barnes & Noble allows EPUB, but it is not compatible with a Kindle. They prefer to stay in their AZW format, and they do not allow EPUB. However, if you have a Kindle Fire, you can change a few settings on your Kindle Fire device and go out and download from the Android bookstore or Android App Store an app reader for EPUB, and then you can upload the books that way. So there is a way around, but you have to know how to do it. So some large garden walls, things that we need to be cautious of when buying content for our students and faculty. Device and brand lock-in. If you are walking into a school that has a required iPad for every student, you have just locked yourself into constantly buying all of your content through iTunes Store, and you're going to buy all of the iOS type apps, and you're going to probably buy content through iBooks, and you may buy through other vendors and put them on an app. You've just locked yourself into a device. And if that's what you want, that's what you're going to have to work with. But if you decide 5 years from now to get rid of that device and move to something else, you have to be very, very cautious of that because you may not take that content with you sometimes. So that's one of the major walls, is this device lock-in, because things aren't transferable because of format and because of DRM. Another huge wall is the digital divide. There are certain people in your schools and in your communities that just absolutely cannot afford any of these devices. And so they can't even get in the garden, much less shop around for some kind of book, because they can't get in. They don't have the means. And that's why schools and libraries are really starting to buy more of the technology and have internet access available, because we're trying to serve all of the people that may not have this, and it's important for us to do that. Accessibility is another huge wall in our garden. Most ebooks aren't fully accessible to people with disabilities. And it's not just visual disabilities, it's mobility disabilities as well. And hearing disabilities, because some of the books are audio formatted as well. Most e-readers are not accessible. HTML is the most accessible format, and DAISY is another special format designed. And you can buy content in those formats. EPUB, the standard that I spoke about, does have some DAISY components, so it is a bit more accessible. iOS devices, so any iPads, any iPhones, any iPods, those are the most accessible devices you can buy on the market. And of course, there's some of the more expensive ones, so that's something to think about. Archiving and perpetual access. When you buy e-content, are you sure it's going to be there in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years? When you buy a print book and you put it on the shelf in your classroom or in your school library, it's going to be there until you throw it away, or maybe until it's destroyed or something, but it's going to be there. You know it's going to be there tomorrow when you go in. We can't necessarily say that for electronic content because we don't own it. We lease it. We pay to access it. And there are major issues that come with that. Who owns that content? Publishers? Amazon's not a, well, they are a publisher, but they don't publish most of the stuff they sell. So who owns the content? The publisher owns the content. So who's making sure we're going to have content into the future? There are organizations, Portico, Clocks, and Locks. These are organizations that are looking to archive digital content, but most of it is focused on higher ed right now. They are archiving millions of scholarly journals and monographs, but not much K-12 material. Archiving comes at a cost. Someone's going to have to pay for it, and in order for you to be able to go and access a copy that might be archived, some kind of event has to happen. A natural disaster, company going out of business, something has to happen for you to be able to go and access that content, and all of that may not be in your control. Another huge thing, another garden wall, is copyright and licensing. When you go and buy a print book, you have something called the right of first sale. You have the right to take your print book and share it with the person next to you, resell it, go to the half-price bookstore and get money for it, donate it to your library, throw it away. Whatever you want to do, that is your right because of this law, the right of first sale. That is not transferring over to electronic books because of the license agreement. When you signed up for your Amazon account or iTunes account or your Barnes & Noble account or any of the accounts, you clicked a button that said, I agree. And you agreed to all of that small print in there. Well, all of that small print takes away pretty much most of the rights you have to own content and do what you want with it, because you're now accessing it, you're now leasing it, and there might be limitations on how you use it, how you share it, if you can share it at all. If you clicked on the Kindle user agreement, you agreed for the non-exclusive right to view, use, and display the content, but the digital content is licensed and not sold to you. If you happen to buy something on Pottermore, it says you have the right to use that book in the way we explained below for your own personal, non-commercial use. So that means libraries are excluded because we are not just a single person. We are buying to share with others. Libraries don't necessarily own our ebooks either. Much of the content that we buy also comes with a license agreement, and there's language in there that often prevents us from doing the things that we'd like to with it. Here's an example from one of our vendors. Nothing contained in the agreement shall be construed as granting the end user any ownership rights in or to the licensed content. So we, too, are paying just to access things. So about the purchasing, there are many, many, many details here and things you should be aware of. And how many of you actually are purchasing ebooks or other digital content for your schools and school libraries? Okay, thank you. So the first rule, you're not just buying content anymore. You are buying content that's wrapped in a container. And this container includes perhaps software, an interface that comes with it. Whether you like it or not, you're buying DRM. You're buying a relationship with a vendor because you may have to pay ongoing fees, or you may have to access it through their website. You are buying a business model, and you're choosing which model to pay to be able to access your content into the future. So it's not as simple as walking into a bookstore and grabbing that print book, paying your money and walking away. They have no idea who you are if you've paid cash. Now you have to sign a license agreement, and they know everything about you, and they know your buying habits. So that's how they can recommend things to you. So a big question to ask yourself if you're buying for your school library is, what is my goal here? Do I want to build the most comprehensive collection that my school's ever seen, something that I can keep forever? Or do I want to use my money differently and just pay for quick access? And think about apps that might be hot right now, but next year nobody cares about them. Think about books that you might just want to lease for a quarter or a semester or just for one unit of the class. These are things that you might want to pay to access. And there's advantages and disadvantages of both of these, and it just depends on your budget and what your goals are. But the content you want to buy will pretty much determine for you the vendor that you're going to be able to choose, the business models that you'll be able to choose, the license that you will sign, and the format of the materials that you will get. And when we're looking at business models, obviously free is perfect, and we love free, and we'd love to see everything free, but that's not the case. But there are plenty of free children's and young adult materials out there for you. Most libraries buy their content in what we call perpetual access, which means we pay a fee to have ongoing access to this content in perpetuity. And we'll buy it for either one person to use at a time, which is what your public libraries are doing, or we'll buy it for multiple people. We'll pretend you're all in the same class, you're all in the same 5th grade science class, and I'm going to buy access to a collection of books so that all of you can use them at the same time. And ideally, that's what you want to be doing in your school settings, because that way an entire classroom or the entire school can use the content together. Subscribing is also another option, and there's nothing wrong with this because it makes sure that you pay a certain amount each year and you can budget for that. You know exactly what you're going to be spending next year to get this content. And sometimes that content will change, though, and maybe you don't have control over it. So you may get updated materials, you may get new books, or they may take out some of the books that are no longer of use anymore. So sometimes you have control over that, sometimes you don't. Short-term loan is another type of model, and that's used a lot, again, in academic libraries where we pay for access for 1 or 5 or 7 or 30 days. So these are the ones that I strongly encourage you to look for when you're buying content for your school library. Again, free, unlimited use for perpetual access, and subscriptions. I wanted to put these kind of visually on a continuum here to show you how they all differ. If you look to the far left of this chart, you'll see an open lock. This signifies content that's free and open to all, and you can pretty much guarantee ongoing access to this. You can download it as much as you want, put it on as many devices as you want. There are no restrictions on any of this. These would be things in the public domain, things where copyright has expired. There are thousands, if not millions, of books out there on the open web that are in this category, and you can find them and you can add these to your library collections. There are things that are open access, which means they're open to you, but someone's paid for them. It may not be you, maybe just somebody else has. You could encourage your school or your district to purchase electronic content and host it locally on your own servers so that you can embed it in different websites and course management systems, and then you have control over it. Again, that gives you, again, more control for ongoing access. As you see, the line goes higher as it goes further to the right, and you'll see at the very end there a lock that is locked. That rising line signifies a couple of things. It signifies the further the higher you get, the more DRM you will come upon on your content, the more restriction, the more control someone else has of your content. And it also signifies your risk of ongoing access to the content. So the further right you go, the higher the risk you have for not having access to that content in the future. So subscriptions, you can't pay it this year, gone. Content's gone. Short-term loans, you're buying them just for a quick fix, and you're gone. So think about that as you buy your content, and what part of that continuum are you okay with? And there's risk involved, obviously, with all of them. If you are using online bookstores like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, etc., and you're going there and you're buying items or applications to put on individual devices, they're going to land on this continuum where I've got the yellow arrows going. The one that connects to perpetual access, that's if your school, owns the device, and when that student goes home, you still own that device. When that student graduates, you still own that device. So you have a bit more control over those. But if you're just buying apps and putting them on devices that students are going to take home, take with them when they graduate, you can consider that content gone. Once you see them, the content's gone and you have no control over it. I would strongly encourage you, as much as you possibly can, to buy content with a larger group of people for many reasons. First, you can get more content for less money, or perhaps you get more content for the same amount of money you'd plan to invest. You can get consistency across schools. So if you're in a very, very large school district, and you all go in and you pool your money together, that means every student across every school is going to have access to the same content, and it's a great equalizer. It means students and faculty and parents have the same set of materials to refer to. It also allows you to share content because you're not buying it for your building. You're buying it for all of the buildings, and you can share it better. And often you get volume discounts. Often you sign only one license agreement for the entire unit, and that saves your time, because I know many of the teachers and the librarians don't have a whole lot of support or don't have huge groups of people that can do this for them. And it centralizes all the billing, etc. Some reasons why it's not so good. You'll find publishers that have no interest in this. They don't want to sell it to you as a group because they know they can make more money if they sell it to all of you individually. And so that's one thing you're going to come across. It is a long process because obviously if you're buying for just your school and you're the only decision maker, or you're just working with a group of teachers or faculty, you can make that decision reasonably easily. But if the more your group gets bigger and the more voices you have, the more differing needs you have, the more difficult it is to decide on what content are we going to buy and how are we going to buy it and what format is it going to be in and what interface is it going to be on. So it's going to take a lot of time. It's not necessarily time between you and the publisher, it's time between you and your colleagues to decide what to buy. And you can have sometimes difficulty negotiating prices as a result. And oftentimes, they might not say, hey, you all buy, you all get access. They might say, you all buy and I'll give you all a group discount, but you each have to buy the title or the collection that you want. I consider that the cafeteria plan. Think about going into a cafeteria and you have your tray and everybody puts what they want on the tray and you pay at the end for yourself. But I'll give you a discount because you all came and ate at the same restaurant together. So purchasing for one-to-one or BYOD, bring your own device type programs. Questions to ask yourself. If somebody comes to you and says, I need you to buy all this content because we're having a bunch of iPads in here, or we're having a bunch of Kindle Fires, or we're getting netbooks, things to ask. Who owns the device? Who's going to be buying the content for the device? Whose money is it? Is it the students, the parents, the schools? Whose is it? When the student leaves or when the student graduates, where does the device go? Does it go with them? Where does the content go? Does that go with them? Or are you going to make sure you clean off their devices of every piece of content you've bought for them? Because that's a job in itself. Are the apps that you might be loading to those devices, are they free? Or are they fee-based? And if they're free, are there advertisements included? Because that's something to think about as well. And can the content that you buy be accessed across multiple devices? So if you buy an app from this online app store, is it only available to be used on one device or multiple ones? So big picture questions to ask yourself before you go jumping into buying all of these gadgets and apps and books and other things, because trust me, as soon as you get them and you have them and you see all the wonderful tools that are out there, you just want to go and buy them all. And that price of 99 cents, it seems so cheap until you have to buy it 200 times over, and then next year buy it 200 times over again. Libraries and schools cannot buy and lend apps. We are shut out from that process because they are designed for individual people, individual accounts. They're linked to an account. So a library can't go to the iOS App Store and say, I want to buy these 5 apps so that my entire school can use them. It doesn't happen that way. There's no way for us to host them. There's no way for us to lend them. We can, however, buy content at those individual bookstores. We can buy the apps, we can buy the individual titles and preload them on the devices and lend the physical device out. And that comes with all kinds of legal issues as well. There are many of the vendors that will allow school licensing and make it a bit easier for you. Barnes & Noble has a nice program, Apple has a nice program too. If your students are going to be bringing their own device, a Project Tomorrow did a survey of students aged 8 to 17 to find out what devices are most prevalent among those groups. And they go smallest to largest. So digital readers, very small, very small. But iPods, that was the device owned by most students. And you're probably seeing those quite a bit come into the school. Desktop computers, which aren't so portable, is the next one. Laptops, PCs, and netbooks would be a third one. Cell phones, flip cameras, smartphones with internet access. So it kind of goes up and down. They did show in this study that as the older the child gets, the more likely they were to have an iPad or to have some type of tablet that would have internet access. So some things to be cautious of when going to your online bookstore to buy content for that individual device that you might be checking out or that students might use in a classroom setting. Read the license agreement because someone has to agree to it. Check to see if they have a school or a site license that covers an institution, because otherwise you have to register it to a person, and often that person might be you, and that may not be a responsibility you want. Think about the formats that they have and the options for reading and consuming that content. What are they? What are the restrictions? Is the content transferable? Because oftentimes it is not. Most of the time you're buying one copy at a single price and putting it on one device. Sometimes they'll allow you to share, between 4 or 5 or maybe 6 devices. But again, the license agreement will tell you whether you can do that or not. If you change vendors, if you are a Kindle school and suddenly you decide to become an Apple school, are you going to lose your content? Or is there a way for you to use that new Apple device to still get to the content you bought on Kindle? If it's an app, it's not going to happen because you've got an Android-based app and an iOS-based app. But if it's an ebook that can be read on an application, iPads can read Kindle books no problem. What kind of updates might need to be happening with that content? Who's going to do the updates on those machines and on those individual apps? And again, think about the free versus the fee ones, and think about the advertisements and what kind of advertisements might your students experience if you're buying content that is free with ads. So some recommendations. Of course, keep in mind I'm a librarian and I'm all about access for all, equal access to all. So if I were buying content for a school library, even with a one-to-one device requirement or a BYOD, I would try my hardest to buy all of the content I could that was accessible through a browser. Browser-based content so that it could be used across devices, across formats. As long as your device has a browser, you can get to the content. And someone said to me earlier, well, that's not convenient because people don't want to walk around with their netbooks. They don't have to. You can access it on your smartphone. You can access it on your tablet, on your Kindle Fire. Those are small portable devices with browsers, and you can buy content that you can get through the browser, just bookmark things for students, give them URLs, and they can get to it. If there's a download option from the content that you buy, make sure it's device agnostic so that they can download it to any device that they need to. When possible, recommend the free sources or the open access sources. And license content, if you're going to have to pay and you're going to have to license it for unlimited simultaneous use so that the entire class or the entire school can get to it at the same time, because you don't want people to get shut out. You definitely want to make sure that when you access the content, it's set up for IP authentication so that when they're sitting on your campus somewhere, in your school somewhere, and they are sitting at a computer that has the IP range of that school, they automatically get into the publisher or the vendor's site and get immediate access, no username or password needed. But when they go home at night, you also want them to have the option to log in with a username or password, and we call that remote authentication. You want to make sure they have that option too, so that your collection extends beyond the walls of the university or the school or the library. As much as you can, embed these links into course materials or research portals. If your library has a website, if your teachers are using websites or course management systems, try to embed all of this content in there so it's easy to find. And if you are going to buy apps, buy them only for the devices that you know the school is going to be keeping. Because if you're going to buy apps for students and they're going to walk out with their device, you've just thrown away all the money on that one, because it's gone. Textbooks are another huge thing that people think about when they're talking about all these bring your own devices. People say, oh, I want the students to have all digital classroom materials, all digital textbooks. And some people are doing that already. And there are a few things to consider here. First, a few stats for you. 27% of middle school children have used digital textbooks before. 35% of high school students are using digital textbooks. In 2012, Pearson, big textbook publisher, did a study and found that tablet ownership tripled between 1 year for students in their teens. So more and more students have access to the tablets. 65% of the students who responded said they felt that e-reading devices helped them in school. And strong majority felt that the e-reading devices will replace their printed textbooks within the next 5 years. They also said 60% of college students prefer digital to paper books, but I'm not sure I believe that. Not the folks that come to my library and ask for books from me. So things, some food for thought to think about for the future as you start to invest in print versus digital textbooks. There's also a LEAD commission, Leading Education by Advancing Digital. Their mission is to move all K-12 schools to digital textbooks in the next 5 years. I strongly encourage you to go and find out more about this. They're looking for low-cost solutions that have high-quality content, of course, and they're looking for things that can be used on any device, with any type of content, any type of connectivity, and any type of tech support, things that are easy to use. And you can download this digital textbook playbook for much more information on this program. So if you're interested, I would encourage you. If you are going to be purchasing digital textbooks, it's important to remember a few things. First, not all the content's digital yet. In fact, the teachers that I've spoken to have said the best textbooks out there are still in print. They're just not in digital yet. And many of them, of course, are going to be designed for use by one person. At least in higher ed, when our students go out and buy a textbook, they can put it on 2 devices, and that's it. And so it's designed for them. And when they're done with it, they can't share it or transfer it. It's connected to their account. Sometimes the digital textbook you only can access if you've already invested in the print. So again, now you're buying both. And what's happening in some of the schools that are really leaning towards this, because the teachers aren't finding the quality textbook materials or the textbook of their choice is not digital, what some of the teachers are doing is having to create their own digital textbooks or digital course materials by going out and just scrounging from different websites and different published books and whatever else they find. And there's a lot of copyright issues that go along with that you really need to think hard about. And of course, it's incredibly time-consuming for teachers to be doing this. So many things to think about. We are totally not here yet when it comes to adopting digital textbooks. I do want to point out open educational resources. I like these because they promote the ability to reuse material, to redistribute material, to revise it as you need, or to remix it as you need, and then use it for your class. And these are generally, they're out there, they're on the web, they exist for K-12, and I'll show you what some of those are. They're protected by what we call the Creative Commons licensing, and there's 6 different types of Creative Commons licensing. The authors of these OER materials create material with the intention of sharing it. And they might say share alike and just share with a contribution, etc. But the idea is make it up, make it public, and let people that want it come and take it and reuse it as is, adapt it, remix it, redistribute it, whatever they want to do, because it's in Creative Commons licensing. The original author still has, the copyright. You are supposed to attribute to them. And each of the things on this screen, all those little symbols, will tell you what you can and can't do with the Creative Commons licensing. So there's some opportunities and challenges with using the OERs. They're free, which is a bonus. They're easy to update and easy to change because they're digital. They're completely customizable. So if you go and you find a unit on the planets and you aren't happy with the way some of the material is approached, you can completely change it. Or you can add a paragraph and you can localize it. So if there's an issue happening in your school or your county or your state that's not reflected, you can add that in. You can put things in about your local community, about local businesses, local case studies, things like that, to really give the students a better connection to the content. It also addresses some of the different learning styles because people are pulling in multimedia type sources, and many of those are open OERs as well. And what I think is probably one of the better parts is you can break these up into granular pieces. You don't have to take the life science book as is. You can take chapter 1, you can take unit 3, you can take unit 5, and then you can go over to this life science book and pull pieces out of it and create your own book for your own class, customize how you need it. It's very time consuming. It's going to take a lot of time to go out and find the materials, review the materials, edit the materials, make the materials available. This might take significant buy-in. Your administrators, your teachers may not want anything to do with this because we know it's a lot easier just to pay a price and get a textbook that's ready for you already. It obviously requires technology because they're web-based. You're going to have some type of computer to access them. And if the students are using them, unless you have designed a way for them to print them out in a PDF or download in a PDF, then they will have to use them online. And so that's problematic as well. Many people question the content and whether or not it's quality, but what's happening with the OERs, they're addressing this by setting up review systems, and they're having other experts in the field review and give them certain ratings so that they can bring up the standards and make sure people know that it's quality material. And then probably the biggest challenge is they're young, they're in their infancy, not everything's available yet. And so you may find that when you go out there, you might have to create the unit that you need on this specific thing because it's just not there yet. There are a number of these OERs for K-12. The CK-12 Foundation, Curriki, Florida Orange Grove, K-12 handheld ebooks, and Connections are the 5 that I would suggest taking a look at. There are also many of these for higher education as well, and they may include materials that you or the faculty or the teachers need as well. So if you want some of the names of those, I'll be happy to share them with you. So basically what all of this comes down to is how can you guarantee access to content across all device types? And that's the question you have to answer in your individual school and your individual library. How do I get here? How do I have a classroom full of Kindle Fires, netbooks, iPads, smartphones, and other tablets or MP3 player, whatever it is? How can I guarantee that every child in this room, that every teacher in this school, that every parent outside of my school can use whatever device they have to come and access the content that I have paid for them? If you can answer that question and make a wise investment with your money, that's the best solution for you. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you have. Yes. Essentially what she's asking is, do you think we'll eventually go all digital, because obviously there's multiple types of content out there. I would say no. There's no way that some people don't want it. Some people want print, and people say to me all the time, "Oh, when's print going to go away?" I'm like, never. And it's just not going to happen. We still like our print materials. Are we working to digitize all of our special collections to make them more visible? Yes. I would say the majority of libraries spend their time digitizing because they want to create broader access to their special content that they own. So we will continue to do that. Publishers will continue to increase their time and efforts in creating digital content, but they will still be creating print content too. I mean, when you really look at the big picture and look at how many people own e-readers and the number of e-sales versus print sales, it is still quite small. Are there any other questions? Yes. DAISY is a format, a file format that is designed specifically to for people with disabilities. So working in that format, in that software, it allows people with disabilities to be able to listen, read, whatever they need to do for that content, and they don't, it's just much more accessible. I forget what DAISY stands for, and I should have written it down. It's a format that's been around for a very long time, and there are collections of DAISY books out there on the web. Many people that require DAISY, they know they need DAISY, and they've gotten some kind of certificate from a physician that says they need a special kind of format. And because of that, libraries are able to bypass some of the copyright laws and make content available in alternative formats for these folks, but they have to have some type of certification. I believe the Internet Archive has a collection listed of DAISY materials, and if you give me a minute after the session, I'll find out exactly what the acronym stands for. Any other questions? I will be here for a few minutes. You're welcome to stop up and ask me something individually, but if not, thank you for coming. Thank you for your interest, and enjoy the rest of your day and your conference. Thank you.